Blackstone, Vermont, 2001. On that September night, there was an oppressive silence over the town of Blackstone. Leaves rustled through the streets as if searching for something. The wind howled through the trees, bringing with it a sense that something alien lurked in the darkness. On September 2nd, Timmy Walsh, an 8-year-old boy, disappeared. His disappearance was the first link in a chain of mysteries, and it's a mystery that still has the town shaking. His mother, Mrs. Walsh, always repeats the same story, telling it with a broken voice and eyes full of terror. It flew into the room, right through the window, a huge creature with leathery wings and glowing eyes. It grabbed Tommy like a rag doll and disappeared into the sky. The police who arrived at the Walsh house wrote it off as hysteria. The report said, "The boy probably ran away from home." Case closed. 2 weeks later, however, a teenager who was returning from a party disappeared. He never came home. The search for this teenager was unsuccessful. There were no witnesses or traces of his mysterious disappearance. 20 days later, another child disappeared, this time right out of the church parking lot. October 2001. 10 years later, I found myself back in Blackstone, the town where my childhood years were spent, where my obsession with what lurks in the shadows first began. At first glance, it looked like nothing had changed. The same narrow streets with tall trees, the same dark brick houses with peeling paint, and of course, St. Patrick's Church. It was gloomy, built on a hill in the Gothic style. You could see anywhere in the city from this spot. Its tower still towered over the city, the stone gargoyles still perched on the eaves, frozen in the eternal pose of observers or hungry predators. They are said to be merely an architectural element and are supposed to ward off evil. However, things have always been a little different in Blackstone. My grandfather served here all his life. His name was Father Michael. He was a model of faith and virtue to the townspeople. He was a kind but strict priest. People came to him not only to confess, but also to ask for advice, consolation, salvation. He was the last one who believed that the church was not just a building, but a wall between this world and the other. A year ago, he was found dead right on the church porch. His body was torn up like a wild animal attack. Police wrote it off to stray dogs, maybe coyotes. Nobody dug any deeper. Except me, since I knew it wasn't animals. I knew my grandfather had found something that should have stayed locked away forever. And now that I'm back here, I can feel it waiting. It hasn't gone anywhere. Arriving in town, I headed to the town library. In the archives room, I met the old librarian, Mr. Henshaw. His voice sounded like the creaking of wooden floorboards, dry, broken by time, but still strong. "They're gargoyles," he began, slowly, as if each word was hard for him to say. "They're not just decorations for the church." Henshaw slowly laid out the yellowed sheets in front of me. "These records go back to 1873, he said, tapping a long finger on the patterned header. A strange man had come to Blackstone then, a priest named Father Luciano. He was said to have come from Rome, though no diocese would confirm his name. He was silent, almost somber. However, he was always followed by some sort of mystery. He brought with him not only Latin masses and icons, but something else. 4 massive statues, gargoyles, stone, moss-covered with distorted faces and open mouths. He had installed them on the eaves of St. Patrick's Church, claiming they were not for decoration, but for protection. He claimed that these beings guard the church from evil, but there is one nuance. They do their work only under one condition. "What was it?" I asked. "What condition?" Henshaw's eyes became glassy, as if he were looking through me. He whispered, almost inaudible, that they must be fed. "Feed them? With what?" I asked. There was a pause. A silence hung over the room. Suddenly, with frightening calmness, Mr. Henshaw said, "Blood." A few days after I came to Blackstone, There was a very loud scream in the night. It could have seemed as if the scream was heard throughout the town. It wasn't just a scream. You could hear the pain in it. A kind of animal terror that made my hair stand on end. It echoed through the narrow streets of Blackstone, echoing somewhere around the church. I sprinted out into the street, my heart pounding hard in my chest. The air smelled of dampness and something metallic, like blood. The sky was dark, the stars barely peeking through the heavy clouds. The streetlights flickered dimly, as if afraid to illuminate what was happening. I ran toward the sound, toward the old church. There, on the stone steps, I saw her. At first, my mind refused to accept what I saw. My eyes saw a stone gargoyle, the same one I remembered from my childhood sitting on the ledge of the church. Cold, unmoving, like part of the building itself. Now it was here on the ground, breathing. Her massive wings were open, like those of a hawk on the point of attack. Only they weren't feathers, but something resembling black leather. Beneath her I saw Mrs. Donovan, her clothes all crimson heels, out of breath. Mrs. Donovan was my first teacher. Her eyes were open. In them I saw terror frozen forever. The gargoyle didn't move, but I could feel it. She knew I was here. The next moment her head slowly turned toward me. The stone eyes lit up with a dim, ominous light. She stared directly at me. There was no sound, no growl, only silence. I don't remember turning around. I don't remember running home. All that's left in my mind is that look. Stony, alive, predatory. The next day, I accidentally found the diary. Or maybe it found me. It was in the basement of the old parish house at the church where my grandfather Michael lived. The room held the smell of mold and wax. The whole place looked like he had just gone out to the store and never came back. I riffled through the drawers looking for some explanation. Beneath a layer of yellowed sheets, I found his diary, shabby in a leather binding. The first page was dated 1961. The last entry had been made exactly 1 day before his death. I read by lantern light. Page after page, he wrote about something never mentioned in the sermons, something ancient and hungry. They woke up. Father Luciano was right. If you don't feed them at least once a month, they'll hunt for food on their own. And when they hunt, nothing can stop them. I've seen it. I heard their wings in the dark. It turns out that my grandfather knew. Not just suspected, not just believed, but knew. He was in on it. Not only was he serving God, he had made a deal with something much darker. I can't do this anymore. I can't make sacrifices anymore. I'm broken. God forgive me. It was written in my grandfather's journal. And then there's the last entry. Just one line, written as if in a hurry, the ink almost smeared. They know I've stopped. Tonight they will come for me. I knew now. Grandfather's death was no accident. It was payback. And maybe I was next. I headed back to the library where Henshaw told me more about my grandfather. They were always hungry, and your grandfather fed them, Henshaw said. His voice was quiet, as if he was afraid the gargoyles might overhear even through the library walls. We were sitting in the archive room deep in the basement, among the ancient books. I tried to make sense of what I had heard. "What did you say?" I asked again. "He sacrificed to them," the librarian said. "Vagrants and homeless people that no one would look for. He did it every month. That was the deal with them. My grandfather was a man I thought was righteous, made sacrifices. He used to say prayers with me at bedtime when I was 6 years old. Now your grandfather is dead, and they take whoever they want," Henshaw continued. Later, I returned to the church and went to the basement, which was off limits to the congregation. The lock yielded easily, as if it knew I was coming. There, I found a book, hand-bound with a leather cover, on which was inscribed in Latin letters, "The Dream of the Guardians." The pages of the book were old and brittle. I began to not immediately understand the description of the ritual. Inside was a description of an ancient ritual. It said that gargoyles cannot be killed. They can only be put to sleep. I stood in the basement, holding the book with trembling hands, and I knew now it was up to me. Either I performed the ritual and put the creatures to sleep for good, or I would be the next victim. The ritual must be performed by someone whose blood is linked to the guardian who made the pact. So that's me. I walked out of the basement with the book under my jacket. The wind outside the church howled as if it knew what I was about to do. The next day, I prepared everything I needed. The hardest part was one ingredient, my own blood. I was sitting at the altar, knife in hand, a sharp surgical knife. It had once belonged to my grandfather and was in his drawer labeled for communion or extreme cases. I gathered my strength and made an incision in the palm of my hand. Immediately, blood began to drip into the bowl, thick, scarlet, alive. And then the church shook. A slight tremor ran through the stone slabs. Far above, on the roof, the wings creaked. They knew. They felt. I began to read. The Latin slipped off my tongue like a mantra written not for the human mouth. It was as if the words didn't sound. They vibrated in the air. Sleep. Guardians of the blood. Return to the stone until the next summoning. However, as I spoke the penultimate line, something went wrong. There was a sharp from the side of the entrance, as if something had fallen from a height and shattered the wooden doors into splinters. I turned and saw her. One of the gargoyles, a living one. Her movements were convulsive, like a creature that had just broken out of centuries of hibernation. Its clawed paws dug into the floor, leaving deep furrows in it. Its eyes glowed with yellow fire, and its mouth was open. And that's when I realized, we don't want to sleep. They taste freedom and blood. And the ritual isn't just a way to put them to sleep, it's a battle. I took a step back, knelt at the altar, and shouted the last words of the spell. Cross, word, blood. At that moment, a blinding light flashed through the church, as if the sky itself had discharged through the stained glass. The gargoyle shrieked, not like a beast, but like something intelligent realizing it had lost. I was left alone in the middle of the silence. When the gargoyle froze in place, turning into a motionless lump, I just sat on the floor. There was a stone standing next to me, the stone that had just been breathing. Everything seemed strangely quiet, as if the church was holding its breath with me. I thought it was over, but the silence was deceptive. That same night, I stayed in the parish house to sleep. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't go home. My legs were shaking, my head was buzzing, and my body was chilled. I curled up on the old couch in my grandfather's study, where I had once sat as a child listening to his prayers. Around 3 a.m, I awoke to a sound. Quiet, barely audible, it came from the attic. A rustle, then a creak. I grabbed the lantern, went upstairs. The air was dense, as if smoke had dissolved in it. In a corner of the attic, among the old trunks and boxes, I saw a trap door. It was small, wooden, and ironed. I knew for sure it hadn't been here before. There was a sign on the lid of the hatch, just like the one in my grandfather's diary. A circle with 3 arrows pointing inward. I touched the lid and it opened. No squeak, like it was waiting. Inside was another book, thicker, heavier, wrapped in a cloth with gray ash falling from it. Engraved on the cover, "The Guardians are not alone." I flipped through the first few pages. There were names, dates, locations, rituals, not one, but dozens. The gargoyles were only the first. Over the centuries on every continent, other forms of guardians appeared. Stone, wood, bone, they went by many names. Screamers of the night, silent brothers, blood wailers. They were all bound by an ancient order, a secret brotherhood that ruled this darkness from the shadows. And Father Luciano, he didn't just bring gargoyles back from Europe, he was one of them. And my grandfather probably was too. My ritual didn't destroy evil. It provoked a response, a signal, a messenger. I didn't know where the next ones would come from. I only knew they were on their way. Subscribe to hear the whole story all the way to the end.